these huge question marks in the client's mind. Just because they don't ask them doesn't mean they don't need to be answered. And when we know what those question marks are and we can provide answers to those questions without the client even asking, you're going to put them in a very comfortable situation to move forward. So the easiest thing to do is to know these as an agent, address every one of these concerns, even if they're not voiced,
Right.
and you're able to move through seamlessly to the end, and they're going to be so happy.
Welcome back to the Life Insurance Academy podcast. We have a treat for you, gang. It's Chris
And Zach.
And we're hanging out. Roger is on some luxurious secret mission. That's what we'll call it, a luxurious secret mission at 1% with Cody Askins. If you haven't checked out Cody Askins' content, maybe you've seen him here. He has great stuff too. But we do have a special episode with it's just a couple guys talking about business, and we're hoping that it brings you some value. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is kind of carrying over from our coaching series. We do a coaching series. It's weekly. We just got out of a series that we did, Mastering Sales Through Story. That was a lot of fun.
If you haven't been a part of any of the coaching programs, and big shout out to Chris here, the way you deliver insurance information to something that's relatable to the world, and you make people change the way they view stories, view movies, read books, but also sell insurance, read people. It's really incredible.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And that was kind of the goal of this in this series, Mastering Sales Through Story. The idea was if you can understand something as simple as a movie, then you can understand how to sell insurance. I know that sounds like a weird connection, but my goal, and I told them, during the training, that my goal was to ruin movies for them forever. that they would see the actual movie, that there was a sale going on inside of the movie in every story. There's a sale happening.
You know how it ruined it for me?
How's that?
Film studies class in high school.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So why did you take that?
I don't know.
That's great. I had no idea you took that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. So we were doing that series, and a topic came up inside of that series, and it's this idea that clients aren't saying things to you. They aren't saying things to you, but they matter to them. So it comes out differently. Okay, so it's a communication factor here. So basically, what the client isn't saying, but what they mean.
Okay.
You following me?
So there's two aspects to that.
Okay.
So I'm asking for clarity here.
Okay.
Is it that they're holding back and they're not saying anything, and maybe their body language is communicating something, they want to say something, but they're not actually saying it? Or is it they're telling you something, saying something to you, but it's not what they truly want to say, or it's not what they truly mean?
I think in some cases it's both.
Okay.
In some cases, like there's a thought that's running through their head throughout the sales process that maybe didn't get addressed, that should have been addressed, but they can't mentally and emotionally move forward through the sales process because they have this overwhelming thought that's running through their head.
That's so good and so true. And I'm gonna be the counterpart to that.
Okay.
For the agent perspective, my perspective when I was brand new, probably a lot of people listening to this, if they are brand new or getting into the field or trying to figure this game out, why did I believe everything they said?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yes.
Like, oh, well, no, that she couldn't afford it. It really wasn't a good time for her, even though she's in her jammy pants and hasn't moved all morning, and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But we don't understand the underlying meanings and the reservations and what's beyond that. And that's why I think this is so important, because when we can look and understand below the surface, below what's being communicated, it unlocks a almost like a different language. It's a communication that is going on, right? That is underneath that. We start to hear what they're not saying, and then we start to address what they really want to ask, what they really want to know, in other words without it actually being communicated.
Right. Correct. So I'll give you an example of this. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through a sales process. Now getting the sale. Now I can get the sale. Okay. But at the beginning I didn't. Where from the start they say things like it's not a good time. If this costs anything, I'm not interested. Right. And then by the time we get to the whole sales process and we're filling out the application and I'm showing them numbers, they say, "Oh, that's all it's going to be?" Like they're surprised at how affordable it is. They thought it was going to be way more.
You give out coupons.
Yes. If you're looking for the 30% insurance coupons, no. But I'm guessing you've probably had those conversations as well.
Oh, all the time. And like I said, a new agent or somebody, and it's not, and that's where there's a fine line between being for understanding what the true need is and the true vulnerability of the client, being able to truly connect and fulfill those needs so everybody's protective, and an agent feeling like, oh no, I don't want to be that person because that would be being too persistent, too pushy. That would put me, they would think different of me. I don't want to be that type of person. I'm never going to be that type of person. And there's a fine line. There's a sweet spot between there that you have to get through the BS to where you can communicate to their heart and their family's true needs. Or if you try to be that, I don't even want to say nice guy because you're not mean either way, but if you try to just listen to everything on the surface and let them control everything, you're putting their family at such risk. You're putting them, and you're advocating for the beneficiary in every single one of these situations. And most of the time, that beneficiary is probably not in the home at the moment that you're there. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not in that home. And you're really being their voice in this, because at the end of the day, if you get that phone call for that claim, your client's not calling you up. The one you had the relationship with and sat down with for an hour or 2 hours and talked to their family and got to know them, they're not the ones calling you up. It's the person on that line that you've never met that you set this up for. So you have to look at things in their perspective of on the worst day of their life.
Right.
And when you as an agent can't get past, hey, I need to make the sale, I need to buy more leads, or hey, I need to pay my bill, or hey, like you're worried about your issues and your problems and you can't get past that to really think deeper into how you provide for families, you just don't get anywhere.
Yeah. There's in that story setup, one of the things we talk about is the client is the hero. The client is the hero of their story. We're a guide who comes along. We're a guide with a plan. And what is the plan? The plan is to help the hero win.
Can you explain that? Because I think a lot of people initially would think, well, I don't understand. Why am I not the hero? I'm coming to bring them insurance. Correct.
Yeah. So if you have seen a story, an example would be Star Wars, right? There's a star of the story. The star of the story is Luke Skywalker. We know that. We see Luke dreaming about his future, looking at 2 sons, all that stuff. And then there's this initial call to an adventure, and it's R2-D2, and he shows the princess, right? And Obi-Wan Kenobi, I need your help. Who the heck's this Obi-Wan Kenobi guy, you know? And he hears this story of this wild guy that lives out in the desert. So it's clear in the movie the star is him, right? It's true in our sales process. Like, we aren't the star of the story.
So that would be the client.
Yeah, it needs to be the prospective client, the person who sent in a lead request. They're the ones who have a problem. They have a problem. So the guide simply comes along to help them solve the problem. That's who Obi-Wan Kenobi is in Star Wars. So
it could also be that, because a lot of them fill out the card or fill out a lead or get interested or even are open to a conversation if there's not a lead. But some people are actually open to a conversation and they might not know why. They know there's something meant
Right.
for them. They feel this tug, this magnetic pull towards doing something right.
Yeah. So there might be a concern, a worry, but they don't have language for that at that point.
Correct.
So as a guide, we're coming alongside of them and helping them gather that language, or helping them make it become three-dimensional or real to them.
And I think this is a very important part of this topic today, because it doesn't mean because they're not saying it that they don't feel it, or they don't need to take care of it, or they don't want to take care of it. Just like you said, they don't have words for it yet.
Mm.
It's inside. It's been internalized, and they're trying to find a way to communicate it, but also make sure it's being fulfilled the proper way. And I think a lot of that, when it comes to being a good agent, in listening to your clients, these are the cues and the things you have to listen for and look for, the words that are not being said vocally.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The words that are hidden in between the lines of the actual words they're saying.
Yeah.
These are the things we have to look for, because this is so new to them. They're trying to say it but don't know how.
Right. That's very good. And through this we'll say the guide who has a plan, and this is great. We can give every agent the plan that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And we do, like in our trainings, and this is the language that we use. Build trust, transfer belief, raise the stakes, reveal and raise the stakes, present options, and offer a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of problems that happen is because an agent wants to skip all of those and jump to offer a solution, right? But if you think about it, when we talk about here,
just say it for me.
When you think about it, no, trademark Zach McElwain. In the building trust part, and I know you're going to appreciate this, there's a thing that runs in the mind of the client, even after they get to know you a little bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you've built trust, you've established authority, you've showed empathy, you're a human being, you've shown your credentials. They're like, I kind of trust this guy. He's not a stranger anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what's running in the back of their mind. I think, I don't want to make the wrong decision. And they're thinking that the whole time. And there's a big piece of the credibility or building trust that I know is valuable to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the education piece.
Yeah, it definitely. Two parts of that. A lot of people don't want to make the wrong decision, so they end up making no decision.
Absolutely.
And when they make no
Mm-hmm.
decision, it ends up being the wrong decision.
Right.
Because that ends up being doing nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and then their family's stuck, right?
Yeah.
And it can devastate for generations to come. But I talk about this all the time in the training, that trust is formed in those two different ways. Empathy and authority, right? It's the relationship and the credibility. There's people in your life right now that, if you had to go out of town, or if I had to go out of town, I would trust you to, pick Ava up from school or something like that.
I wouldn't trust me to do
But
that.
you're probably right. I was just doing that for the listeners. But there's people in your life
Yeah.
that you would trust to be able to watch your kids.
Yes.
Right. Now, if you had a specific special car, those probably aren't the same people you would let them do a brake job and oil change on your special car.
Right.
Right.
You don't want me to do that.
There's no way. There's no way.
right.
But at the
That's right.
same, but you trust those people with your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you won't let them touch your car. Well, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But there's also the people that you would trust with your car. Like, everybody has their own mechanic shop,
Correct.
their own
Mm-hmm.
their own person that fixes it every time, does it right. Hey, no, I got my guy for that. You wouldn't let that person watch your kids, right?
Right. Yes.
So there's two forms of this trust that's established through relationships and credibility. And when we come into the home, when we meet these people, when we call them on the phone, we have to understand how people trust people. And when we can develop both of those with your client, now you're the guy that can watch the kids and change the oil, right?
Yeah.
You're the person that can trust them to take care of their family, to be empathetic to their kids and ensure their family's going to be taken care of, and do all the paperwork, file the claims, be there for them, but also gives them the peace of mind knowing, which at the end of the day, guys, all we are is selling a promise, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're selling a promise and a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That they're trusting you, that this paper, this form, this policy is going to pay out and be there, and it's the right one and the best one for them. So there's two sides of that there.
Yeah. And I felt like, and this, I've seen you do that education piece, that credibility piece.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you this, Zach. You do such a great job with it. If you know they're running through this question in the back of their heads, but they're not saying it, that's the tricky part. They are not saying these words. I don't want to make the wrong decision. I don't want to make the wrong decision. They keep saying it in the back of their heads, and you ignore that or don't address it. What's going to happen?
Well, simply, I probably have the mindset of an agent that I am moving through these steps. Even if you have the Life Insurance Academy presentation, even if you've been on our coaching and trainings and you're going through these steps, right? The difference is, are you moving through them to get through them, to talk to them about that? Or are you uncovering, discovering, and teaching and educating and move through it? The pace of your presentation depends upon the client's understanding.
Dude, that is gold right there. We're done. See you guys. Have a good day. That's really good. Say that again. That's really good.
You always have to teach and educate not on your level of knowledge, but their level of understanding. And that varies with every single
So the pace
client.
of your presentation is dependent on their level of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, and also your language and your tone and your personality is dependent on their personality and how they receive information. Because there's different types of personalities out there, right? We have to know how to be able to adapt to make sure. But our goal is to move through, and imagine like a little, stoplight, and we're going through each, I don't want to say each page, but each section or point.
Whether it's the script for telesales or whether it's
exactly.
face-to-face
There's things we want to accomplish, right? And we're grading ourselves on that. Like it would go from every step, like trust. When you walk into the home, that bad boy's on red. Once we get it to yellow, okay, we're getting a little bit. Once it goes to green, then I know we can move to the next one. Yeah. It's not time bound on a stopwatch. So one of the biggest questions I get is how long should it take to build trust? My answer is as long as it takes. Right? Yeah. Could be 5 minutes, could be 50 minutes. It depends on you, depends on the personality. But we want to get green lights and move through that. And the only way we can do that is to knowing what we need to uncover, knowing where they need to be, understanding wise, but also emotionally and pulling that out. And your client will dictate the speed of you go through. Now, that's very important. We don't allow them to dictate the pace or control the presentation, but we can't, just like your question was, I can't move forward and start moving into stakes and need and want and all of these things and going through prices, because if they have something that's stuck in the education portion that they didn't quite get, that uncertainty is going to stay in their mind, and anything you say beyond that, I don't care if you're smiling and high-fiving the whole time, they're never going to get past that.
They'll keep asking themselves, did I make the right decision? Or am I making the right decision? And once you leave, they're going to keep asking that question.
Everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold. And the only reason somebody doesn't buy is because they don't have enough information.
Correct. Yeah.
Here's the other thing. It's a universal principle. Nobody wants to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You don't believe me? What if somebody called you up right now in your car and told you to do this or do that? You go, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Right? It's like a universal principle.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that's how we are. That's probably how our clients are. So all we need to do is give them the information, ask them good questions, moving towards what they want, and they will make the decision to move forward.
Here's another one. And I try to keep this in line with these principles, with the plan of the guide, right? The other one is that's running in the back of people's minds that is not being said. It may come out in a different way, but I can do that later. I can take care of this later. I'm busy right now. That's the thing that's running. And I feel like the relationship to identifying and raising the stakes is key here. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Like that identifying and raising the stakes, the key word to that is identifying. Because if you don't identify, you can't raise the stakes.
Yeah.
And identifying isn't what they think it is. It isn't, Mr. Chris, what really made you start thinking about your final expenses? Oh, I just need insurance.
Right. It's
No,
that's the
nobody
external,
needs insurance, right?
The external need, right?
What they need is they need their daughter to be taken care of if they passed away financially. They
Right.
need their daughter to have the resources and funds to be able to pay for a funeral. That isn't a piece of policy, right? Like it's, you have to be able to get to that. And that's throughout the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. What is the percentage of what comes out of your client's mouth that is actually true?
I don't know what the percentage is, but I don't think most people aren't maliciously lying.
Not at all. That's the
that's-
magic about it.
yeah.
It's not like you go to the door, I'm not interested. Well, that's not true. Like
You filled it out. You requested the information. You
Yeah.
requested it, right?
10 people out of every 1,000 people fill this out, and it's for one reason or another. Because generally they lost somebody close to them recently, or they've had some type of health scare that made them realize they're not invincible anymore. Something happened to trigger a response for this to stand out.
Yeah.
You are interested. You just don't want to tell me you're interested.
Right. It's like magnets repelling each other.
But the key to all of this is us as professionals, us as agents, we have to understand the truth before we ever go into a sit.
Right.
We have to understand what is the underlying needs in every household. And when we actually sit with that family, we're just putting real names, real need, and real numbers to that universal need.
Correct.
I'm not really that interested, right? Completely not a big deal. Moving through the presentation, looking at identifying and raising the stakes, when they say, and this is that portion we talked about earlier of identifying and raising the stakes. Well, what really got you thinking about it? Most people fill them out for one of these 4 reasons, and you're starting to go through that, and they give you that surface level answer always first.
Right.
Well, I just needed coverage. And
Well, and they're in their mind, they're controlling, they're controlling it now at this point. Like they're like, I don't need your plan. I can take care of this myself on that front side. So if they're reaching for the wheel, basically,
Absolutely,
that can be a problem.
it is.
Yeah.
But they're starting, and this is the magic of the final expense sit, sell, presentation, relationship, protecting a family, whatever you want to call it, is you start to see the transformation right at this part. You literally start to see them, because we talked about earlier, they have this feeling inside of them that they don't know how to voice, that they don't know how to put words to it, what it really is.
Correct.
They just know they need to do it. This is, once you have that trust, you made them comfortable. Once you have educated them and moved through it, now they understand probably what's right or wrong or what they need to do. And now we're getting to why they need to do it. And this is where we're helping them formulate and pull that out of them.
Correct.
And we said this the other day. This is funny. Shout out to this agent. I call him Reese Collins. Reese Collins, my buddy. Shout out to him. But we had a conversation. He's a new agent. And he said, he called me up and I said, did you ever ask? And I said this particular question to the client. He's like, no. And I was like, all right, really? Like, that is the most universal question ever. Like, that is the number one question. You can almost just say that repeatedly from the time you walk in the door to the time you leave, and you probably get the app. Like, it's like the most important question you get asked. And he goes, man, that's amazing. He goes, I just didn't ask that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to call Chris right now. And I merged Chris in. So I'm going to call Chris right now, and I'm going to ask him the same question. I bet this is what he says. I called you up. It was like 9:30 at night or something. I was like, Chris, I got to ask you a question. What's the most important question on the entire presentation in any sit? You're like,
Why is this important to you?
and yes. And this agent goes, no way.
Like it was a magic trick.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what does that allow them to do? Like the client, what does that do for the client when you say those words?
Well, it allows them to, they're taking ownership of it now. They're able to start articulating names, the people they care about, and starting to see what's at stake or what's at risk.
Yeah. I like to think that at that moment, because they give you an answer first, and it's always less emotional, more surface level. Well, I just really need this to take care of my family, or I don't have any insurance, or my mom died and she didn't have any, and I don't want to leave my family that way. Like, those are great answers, but it hasn't been that ownership yet. But when you ask that question, it's almost as if they go from thinking with their head to thinking with their heart, right in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time, and you can hear them process that. But why does that matter to you? Why does that really matter to you, Mr. Chris?
Mm.
And you give them that time to say it, you can hear them like pulling it out, like it's coming out. Those words that they never could communicate to you are now starting to just fall out, and a lot of times tears follow with that.
Correct.
It's a really cool process to see.
Yeah, and that changes their urgency level when they see that. You know, we're talking to folks in final expense land. They're probably 10 years beyond when they should have taken care of this in most cases. With mortgage protection, there's a lot at stake. You know, they bought this house. They have dreams in this house. They have purpose for this house. And to have that be a heavy weight and a concern for their family once they're gone, that defeats the purpose of buying it in the first place. So helping them understand those things and seeing that cranks up the temperature for, that's why I see it as a temperature dial of urgency for them to take care of these things. And there's other things that people think that they're not saying. And it does come down to trust. It does come down to stakes. But even options, like I've in the training we talked about, I said there will be people who do not fill out an application with you because they believe it's complicated. Like they will not protect their families because they think it's too hard.
And they just don't know how.
They don't.
They don't know what's going to come next. They want to save themselves from the embarrassment of potentially not being able to get qualified. Because one thing I know for a fact, and I know you know this as well, the people that say you'll never qualify me, I'm way too unhealthy, this or that, they're the healthiest people in the world. And the ones that say I got nothing wrong with me, I'm good to go, those are the ones that you struggle to find a carrier to qualify. And everybody knows that in insurance. These huge question marks in the client's mind, just because they don't ask them doesn't mean they don't need to be answered. And when we know what those question marks are, and we can provide answers to those questions without the client even asking, you're going to put them in a very comfortable situation to move forward, such as, in particular, what you're referring to towards the end of your sale. One of the biggest ones for us, we know we're going to take care of the application. We're going to take care of the interview process. We're going to take care of the follow through and get it issued and paid. We're going to make sure the policy's to their house, either hand delivered or making sure it's getting to them in the mailbox. We're making sure their payment's set up on the proper date so they don't overdraft. So they know when it's expected, if we need to push it out 30 days or not. We know we can do all of that.
We know this.
We know that.
Yes.
The client has no idea. Their assumptions are, I don't have the money today. But they don't say,
that is a big one.
Chris,
Correct.
I don't have the money today. Is there any way we can set this up on a future draft date or maybe next Tuesday?
Right.
They just say, I'm not going to be able to afford it. But they're thinking today, we're thinking ever, right?
Right.
That's a big one. They don't know if they need to go get blood, urine, get on a treadmill, run 10 laps around the house. They don't know what's going to take to get qualified.
They don't know if it's going to cost $400 a month.
They don't know what the price is going to be, and they don't want to ever commit or get excited for something that they're not going to be able to do because it makes them feel disappointed. And once you bring that disappointment after talking about their family, they feel like they're letting down their family.
Right.
They don't want that either. You can avoid all that. And this is great because all of these things, how many times have you heard the client actually voice these concerns to you?
Oh, seldom.
It's very rare.
Very rare. And not until it's revealed, even.
Yes.
Sometimes they're like, oh, man, I thought that was going to cost $400. Oh, I don't have to get blood or urine or anything nobody has to come out to the house.
Exactly.
And they're relieved by these things.
So the easiest thing to do is to know these as an agent, address every one of these concerns, even if they're not voiced.
Right.
And you're able to move through seamlessly to the end, and they're going to be so happy.
Yeah. Hey, gang, I hope this was helpful for you. Just understand that and we did this in the training for Mastering Sales Through Story, that every hero has a call. This is cool, Zach. Every hero has a call, and every hero resists the call. That's built into stories. That means that for thousands of years, human behavior has been written into stories everybody understands, like, oh, hey, people are going to resist a call to action.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? It means that when you do a sale, there will be resistance.
Tell them where they can find this coaching if they missed it.
Yeah. You can check it out at lifeinsuranceacademy.org. We have coaching and we have courses. We're happy to help it any way we can. We want you to be able to be more profitable. We want you to feel like you're winning. That's a big deal to us. So thank you guys so much for being here and checking out this podcast episode. Hope it brings you value. If it does, put it in you can put it in the comments below and tell us how you're winning. And you say, hey, I tried this one thing. We want to hear those stories. We hear them, people call in, but we want to hear them from you on the YouTube channel. So thank you guys very much. We'll catch you on the next episode of Life Insurance Academy podcast. Thanks.